Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Heathen Talk, the only podcast where we are not afraid to tell you you are, in fact, doing it wrong. If you think things sound a little weird tonight, that's because it is Ladies' Night at Heathen Talk. Yes, I have kicked Josh and Torin off the show, and instead have three wonderful guests with me who I'm really excited to talk about women in heathenry and, where have we been, where are we going, and I really think we have a really wide viewpoint here tonight, and I'm really excited. So first of all, I want to get to a couple announcements. We're still having the Facebook kind of issue where people aren't always seeing Heathen Talk. So if you go to Heathen Talk's Facebook page, click like, underneath it'll say see this first. Click that, and that'll let you actually see the Heathen Talk stuff on your page instead of having Facebook do, I don't even know what Facebook does. Also, if you ordered a shirt on our T-Chip drive, we broke T-Chip. Orders are delayed. We'll keep you updated on the Facebook page as we know something. If you want a shirt, they are available. We've got a link on our Facebook. We now have children's sizes available, as well as a coffee mug. And tonight I am debuting a awesome women's fit shirt that is solid color with a solid color logo. And special thanks to my brother for doing these logos for us, even though he's not heathen. I really appreciate him. So, as you know, every week we've started this tradition where we are toasting people who are making a difference in modern heathenry. And especially this is stuff that people who are out there actually doing something rather than just kind of talking about it. They're actually out and doing. So this week, she does not know she's being toasted, and I know she's listening, so I think this is going to be interesting. I want to toast Corby of Tears Good Hand. She's also known as Shield Bear. She actually did the design for our Facebook page, but the reason I want to toast her is because she said, I want a heathen community where I live, but I don't know any heathens. So rather than just complaining, she actually went out and formed a group. And it's right now it's a meetup group called Tears Good Hand. They're having really good attendance with their stuff, and I'm just really impressed with her and the work that she's doing. So, and kind of recognition of her and the work she's doing in upstate New York, hail to Corby.
Hail.
Hail.
Hail. All right, so guys, we have, like I said, if you've noticed all the female voices here, I have three wonderful guests with me and three women who I think have made some pretty interesting contributions to heathenry. First is Diana Paxson. She is a well-known author. She's currently broadcasting live from her hotel room at the Parliament of World Religions. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you.
We have Skadi Snook, who is the author of American Heathens. She is also here with us tonight from Iowa, I believe.
Grinnell, Iowa.
Grinnell, Iowa.
Happy to be here.
And then we have Alvilldr, who I have known personally for way too long. We were both Arkansas heathens way back in the day, but she has written extensively, has a blog, and she's currently working on a book on women in heathenry. So I'm just really excited to have everybody here, and thank you all so much for coming out.
It's a pleasure.
So
Happy to be here.
I want to go around and give you guys each a chance to kind of share a little bit more about yourself, what you'd actually like to share, more than my brief little intro of. So we'll start with you, Diana, and talk about kind of your brief biography of Diana in heathenry.
Well, let's see. It goes back a long time, but briefly, although I was already interested and aware of Norse mythology and attracted to it, I basically got recruited by Odin in 1987 and started pursuing that with a rune class, which meant that I couldn't just give up, as one often does when one has a bright idea. And after a year with this wonderful group of people who were in the rune class, I said, okay, who wants to help me figure out how to do this oracular thing that Hilda Ellis Davison talked about? And they, all being the great people they were, said yay, and we worked on that. And by the time we'd done 2 years together, we had become a kindred. And that was at the beginning of the 90s, and Hrafnar Kindred has been meeting ever since. In the meantime, I also have written a lot of books, and taking up the runes turned out pretty well, and people continue to use it, which is very gratifying to me. I also wrote a book called Essential Asatru, which is intended to be the kind of book that you give to your parents when they want to know what the strange thing is you're doing, or to other kinds of pagans who want to know something about what heathenry is like. And I'm here at the Parliament of World's Religions because in '93 I went to the Parliament when it was held in Chicago, and was the only heathen there as far as I knew, and I jumped at the chance to get in on it. But this is the next time that it's been in the U.S. And I'm doing a presentation on how I as a heathen respond to climate change. And we're doing a panel on Reconstructionist paganisms, which is going to be really interesting. So we also have a booth. So if anybody's in Salt Lake City, come by our booth. We have a great location right near the food.
And who else is? Do you know who else is? I know that you're there with the Troth, and there are a few other people there. Who else is there with you?
Lori Wood, also from the Troth, is here with me, and Angela Turner Carlson, who has been a very active heathen for a long time in California, is with us, and she's also been active in interfaith work for a long time. So she helped us to get the booth, and has a lot of good connections. And there's a load of other kinds of pagans there also.
But there's no other heathen organizations have come out, because I'd heard.
Not as far as I know.
Okay.
But
You
I
may
may know more by the end of the week. Yeah. Somebody's selling runes. I saw a booth for that.
That's really cool. Well, thank you, Diana. Skadi, tell us a little bit about you.
About me or about my heathenry?
Yes.
Gosh, I feel like everything I say might be redundant. Let's see. I got into paganism in the mid-90s, in my teen years, and then found heathenry early in my early college days, on the interwebs at the time, on IRC, no less, 1990s chat. And then in the early 2000s, I started researching it when I was getting my PhD at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Seemed like a good thing to research since it was something I was already doing and I was really interested in learning more about. At that point, I'd already identified as heathen, but I hadn't actually met other heathens because I moved around so much, and being an introvert didn't really get out much. But I did. I went out and I met other heathens, and I started hanging out with people in that area, many of whom I still am friends with and keep in contact with these many years later. And then that took me all over the country to various events where I met Diana, of course, a number of times in a number of places, and other heathens.
Good to see you again.
You too. Yeah, and I had a great time, and it was really influential in my life. Changed who I am as a person, but obviously resulted in a book that I wrote for Temple University Press, and it just came out this summer. So my current path in heathenry has changed, but nonetheless, that's kind of the summary of where I've been and what I've done, in sort of a broad perspective.
And Alvilldr? I'm gonna slip up one of these times. I'm sorry.
It'll be all right. All right. I'm not seeing my picture come on the thing though. Can y'all see me? Or
Yeah,
see me?
sure. Click on if you click on kind of the middle of the screen with whoever you're seeing, it will make it so that whoever's talking will come up in the middle.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So I found heathenry. I was in the military. I was overseas and in Germany, and I was a recovering Baptist from Arkansas. So I had started, I had kind of had my own little philosophy I was doing, and I started reading about Wicca and was like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of sort of a little bit like what I'm believing, but not really. But it was closer than anything else I'd read. And then after a couple years of that, I met some heathens, and we all started hanging out, and I was called by Hella, and it was very frightening at first, and but that was God nearly 20 years ago, and since then I went back to Arkansas after I got out of the military, went to grad school. I'm a historian, although there's not a lot of money in that. If you don't have a PhD, and even when you have a PhD, there's not a lot of money in that. So
No,
I
there's
do.
not.
That's a labor of love. But I do have my blog where I do. I talk about. Well, I was belly dancing for a while, so I explore belly dancing with heathenry, and I've done choreography to Freya, and like reconstructed the Ed-Fed girls' clothing.
Ooh.
So yeah, I do all kinds of weird textile stuff.
Did I by any chance meet you at Penzig
No,
about
ma'am.
20 years ago?
We met at Ben and Mandy's wedding in '07.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, let me see. About 3 years ago, we left Arkansas to go to South Carolina, and there I helped them organize the only two Carolina moots, the regional moots that they had there. Of course, it fell apart after I left, but no, I'm kidding. But anyway, so now I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I have to say, no offense to anybody else's, wherever y'all live, this is the coolest freaking place I've ever been in my life, and I've been a lot of places. I love this damn town. I can't say it enough. My husband and I come home every day and say, I love this town. It's crazy. Anyway.
What town?
Huh?
Which town?
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, I'm still trying to find heathens in this area.
Good luck.
Yeah. It's kind of hard. I was lucky when I moved to Arkansas. I moved to Fayetteville, and there was a very well-established old kindred there. They'd already been there for like 15 years, and they welcomed me into their fold, and it was really cool. And I do miss them a lot.
Yeah, they are a great group of guys. I that's how I met Danielle, was because she was a member of Northwest Arkansas Kindred, and man, it's such a great. You wouldn't think that the middle of nowhere Arkansas would have this amazing heathen community, but it really does.
Danielle, I do know some Tennessee heathens. I'll send you some contacts after this.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I lived in Mississippi for 10 years.
Just bless your heart.
Just yep. Just prior to this summer, so I met a lot of Southern folks down there. So.
And it's definitely interesting. We've talked a lot on this show about regional heathenry, and it's very interesting just how, like, even I talk about how we practice heathenry, and we're kind of influenced by the guys in Fayetteville a lot, just because that's who we've had the most contact with. Versus, you talk to somebody who's out in Cascadia, where they think that that's the only civilized place in the world, and they've got some differences just because of just those regional variances and how things have developed. And
yeah.
I don't want to get off track,
Yep.
but Diana said something really interesting to me, that really kind of how her group evolved was very organic and regional, in the sense that they went through and took the practices that worked for them. And I think don't worry, we're probably gonna have you back on the show again to talk about regional California heathenry. So
okay,
because that's
things are different out there on the frontier.
Yes, that's kind of how we that's one of our big interests. So let's talk a little bit about I'll talk a little bit here about heathenry and about women, because I know many of you have this background. Prior to in our pre-Christian kind of religious ancestors, what place did women really have when it came to religious beliefs?
somebody else tackle that?
Since you kind of
Danielle?
have to have women to have a tribe, I think that they were absolutely essential. Women were the ones teaching the children while the men were out hunting or doing whatever they did. So we've always been teachers. Of course, we're mothers and sisters and wives, but we are the teachers of the young. And I really kind of think that's something that we really should shoulder with new heathens as well, because those are our young coming in. But that's just my personal thought on that.
Well, Tacitus has a lot of interesting things to say. Of course, you never quite know just how far you can trust him, but according to him, the old Germanic tribes thought that women were spiritually superior. And the other thing, that the whole line about reverencing some of them as goddesses, and Veleda, and her position as the seeress in the revolt against the Romans, and also the role of the women in warfare, where they sort of stood on the sidelines like Valkyrie cheerleaders and urged their men on. So clearly the concept of female power was pretty strong in the old days. And I think even though there was, in my opinion, a steady erosion of female status from the time they came into contact with Christianity, they still had more rights in Scandinavia than they did anywhere else in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Historians, elaborate on that.
Yes. Well, I know, for instance, women, I mean, just looking at like property rights for women and looking at the fact that women had the power, had more social power, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, on the family, women just had more social power, and women were trusted to keep the pocketbooks, and they were the ones that kind of kept things going. And I always found that very, very fascinating, given kind of how our culture is now. Even if I grew up, I'm also a recovering Southern Baptist, but in the churches, even women are the ones who seem to do all the heavy lifting when it comes to religious stuff with teaching and all that. And I find that very interesting, how that kind of carried through.
I think that's true in the Catholic Church as well, actually. But, okay, women could institute divorce in Scandinavia.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the role the women play in the sagas, it's extremely active.
So, thinking about that, we feel pretty decent about that. So I guess what I really want to kind of focus on for most of the show is kind of, as women and our experiences, where have we been in the more recent modern heathenry past? I looked and I tried to get the information, and I know, looking at what very little information there is even about the demographics of heathenry right now, there's really no, I mean, all I have is anecdotal evidence at best about even, percentages of, how many are women, how many versus how many men are actively heathen. And that's interesting. I think there's a perception that there are a lot more men than there are women. Any thoughts on that?
I have the data.
Skadi?
You have data. Oh, yes.
Ask the sociologist. Here it comes.
Yes.
I think Helen Berger did a census. She called it the Pagan Census Revisited in 2009 and 2010. And she found that in heathenry, the ratio was nearly equally divided between men and women, 50.8% female and 47.8% male. And actually, when I did a survey a few years ago, I had 678 respondents, and I found about the same thing. There was about an equal split in the middle. So I think what would be interesting to talk about is how were women doing heathenry, and how were they represented in heathenry, and how were they influencing heathenry, say 20 years ago versus 10 years ago versus now.
I may be the best person to talk about the earlier period.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I became a pagan in the 70s, really, the 60s and the 70s. Very eclectic sort of pagan, and then moving into being primarily goddess pagan. But I was at the San Francisco Bay Area community may be unique in that it has always been extremely open, and so everybody, no matter what their tradition, knew everybody else, and a lot of people attended each other's rituals. So one of the people that I knew was Prudence Priest, and so she goes back to the earlier 60s, and she said that when she first got into heathenry, when she and her friend Pasha would turn up at a festival, the men would go, "Oh, there's so many women here." and in 90, I think it was 91, at the Covenant of the Goddess Merry Meet, after I was currently first officer of the Covenant of the Goddess for my sins, and after having chaired the general meeting all day, I was only too happy to wander over to the booth where they had all the runes and 5 gallons of mead and hang out. I met Bill Bainbridge and Phil Nearing, and they were in the troth, and they had come to Merry Meet because they said that they'd heard that the Wiccans did good ritual. They felt it was time that heathens got to know the rest of paganry, and they'd heard there were a lot of women. So, all 3 of which were true. So after over the course of the weekend, we killed the 5 gallons of mead.
Oh my gosh.
And I figured, okay, these guys are in the troth, and they seem pretty solid. And by this time, Hrafnar had been going 2-3 years, and I thought I might dare to take Hrafnar members to these heathens. They might be safe. And at that time, Prudence Priest had just taken over the troth, and she was holding troth boot in California, which made it very easy. And the first year I just went, and the second year I brought my kindred. But it very definitely was primarily male in those days. And certainly in the troth, the population has been more and more equal. And the troth has had a number of women in leadership positions.
So in those earlier years when heathens were primarily men, were the women coming into heathenry primarily Wiccan?
Yep, that's my impression. And they were mostly marrying in or being brought in by their men.
Mm-hmm. But, what kind of influence do you think that had on sort of heathen practice?
Well, I think the goddesses started getting a lot more attention, and the cooking got better.
I will say the troth, when I've been to troth food, excellent food. It's always been some of the best, so they do pretty good work.
Yep.
And you're interesting you brought up, Prudence. I know Prudence comes up a lot when you talk about kind of the early days, because I know a lot of the perception that I have personally, and other people I've talked with who didn't come into heathenry until, say, the 2000s, are that those days were kind of Wild West, crazy bikers, and that's heavily, I will say that's heavily influenced by kind of when you hear the history of heathenry, you hear
especially when you hear it from Prudence.
Yeah.
Fair enough, but you hear a lot about the Odinic rite. You hear about all that kind of craziness in the 70s, and you don't hear a lot about. I'm going to say this. You really don't hear a lot about women.
Well, except for Freya Aslan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is a whole story all in herself. I could tell it if we ran out of things to do.
Yeah, she's certainly a horse of a different color.
Yep.
And she is, but I think that it's been interesting. I'm wondering, and I'm wondering kind of to pick y'all's brains, why do we still have that perception, though, that heathenry is this male, masculine-dominated religion?
Back in 2011, at Lightning Across the Plains, I gave a workshop on women's roles in pre-Christian Germanic society. And I had a tent full of women. And
I was one of those women.
Were you?
Yeah.
Wow. I had a young woman who said that her kindred brothers had told her she should go somewhere else, that there was nothing there for her. And it almost broke my heart. And so, yeah, when I moved out to the Carolinas, I gave that workshop again, and it was very well received again. And yeah, I don't know why we let the guys think that or say those things. I don't know.
I'm going to get in trouble.
Go for it, girl.
Go. Oh, that's what. Welcome to our podcast. We still haven't hit our F-word allowance yet, so we're doing good.
Oh, we can drop F-bombs?
Oh, we are. Yes, we can drop F-bombs.
Well, all right. I don't know. I think that there's a great deal of hypermasculinity in heathenry. I mean, a lot of people conceptualize heathenry as the religion of the Vikings. Like these Viking men are sort of the archetypes that people have in their minds when they think of heathens. They don't think of like women. They think of Viking men.
Well, maybe sexy Valkyries.
Maybe
Yeah.
if they're sexy Valkyries with the pointy boobs. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a very pervasive sort of conceptualization of what it means to do heathen, or sort of the elder heathen, if you will. And I think that early in the early 70s, when heathenry became a thing, I mean, if you take it back to McNallen's Viking Brotherhood, that came out right around the time of the mythopoetic men's movements that were a bunch of men going into the woods, howling at the moon, and shirtless, beating drums, to try and sort of combat this sort of takeover of these crazy rabid feminists, of the day, and of course Wiccans being part of that, the sort of female spirituality movements of the 60s and 70s, and so if we trace heathenry back to those days, it's intimately connected to these men's movements and this sort of hyper-masculine energy, and so that hasn't gone away. What's happened is that more women have come into the movement and they no longer have to prove themselves. They no longer have to be one of the guys in order to be accepted like they did in the early years. And so now I think things are sort of have plateaued to a degree. There's still plenty of hypermasculinity, and everybody engages in it, in the hypermasculine revelry that is, hammer tossing and Viking raids and Viking games and, the drinking games and you name it. But I think that women have less to prove now. That doesn't mean we don't have a lot to prove. That just means we have less to prove.
And it kind of comes into a question that we actually got from Reddit, where you're talking about kind of the Viking true, or the brositru, as I've heard it called, or the did brositru, to credit a friend of mine on Tumblr. I've heard this from Shieldmare, who we just hosted. I've heard the term trailer park shield maidens. What is this, and what are your thoughts?
What the hell?
I have heard this on Facebook, and it's the idea that you've got, it's kind of the female counterpart to the brositru. Like it's hard to explain beyond that. It really is kind of the female counterpart to the brositru, I guess.
This
where
may
it's
be
women.
one of those regional things.
Yeah, it may be a regional thing. I've seen it on Facebook on some of the great
like tailgate save.
Yeah, I that's a bit, honestly, Shieldmare, that's really the best I can do. Just because that's pretty much, as far as I know, it's kind of like the female counterpart of the more Viking battle masculinity.
Can somebody explain what does it mean? I've never heard this thing.
Me either.
That's literally the only time I've ever heard it referenced as kind of as like a female counterpoint part. Instead of calling somebody like a Viking true or a metal true,
Okay.
that would be kind of the female counterpoint part of that.
I think we have to be aware of the regional differences.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Things are different on the coasts than they
Yeah.
are in the Midwest.
Or
Yep.
the South. I don't know
Yeah.
that we necessarily claim Midwest over here in Arkansas, but we are our own weird thing.
They want to claim us, but
No.
yeah.
I've
been told since I've moved to. Oh, sorry. I was going to tell you, Lauren, when I moved to South Carolina, I was told that Arkansas wasn't the South, and I was like, excuse me? Don't even make me have to fight you over this, because a South Arkansas girl will whip your ass. Anyway,
Hey.
go for it.
Well, my thing is that, like, I refer to what we do here as Ozark Heathenry. Because I think that what we do is distinctly different from the South than it is from the Midwest, but that's a whole kettle of fish. But yeah, it's really women. I really think that I can remember going to stuff and feeling, it is very hyper-masculine. In some, I've been to plenty of events with certain people in this group, Alvilldr, where we have done the manly, the drinking and the hammer throwing and the caber tossing and the.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of what we did, and so, but
I don't know if you were there when I started bringing belly dancing.
No, I was.
To
that was
our moods.
But how much, like, I can't tell you. Danielle's the one who taught me how to drop spindle, and a lot of other things like that were more, I guess you could call feminine, though they were open to. That was the good thing about the kind of more masculine things we did. It was open to everybody. There was no, it was everybody. Where we also started doing more, I guess, female-oriented arts, fiber arts.
Did you have a lot of men knitters?
I'm
volunteers? Did you have a lot of men knitters?
Actually, there was one in particular, Rodney, who still is very super crafty. Now he's into pottery. He moves around in his creative flows. But yeah, he was knitting and crocheting like crazy there for a while. And actually, he was with me when I bought my first drop spindle. So yeah.
But I do think it is very. We do have a lot of hyper-masculinity. We do have a lot of warrior archetype, people who want to try to pigeonhole heathenry into just being the Valhalla-bound warrior religion.
There's also a sizable contingent of ex-military in heathenry.
Yeah.
So well, I think that contributes.
One of the reasons I was attracted to heathenry was that because it did value the warrior spirit. Mm-hmm. Whereas, which I wasn't finding so much in Wicca. And yes, the Troth did a book. We did a book called Words for Warriors because of that. And of course, now that women are in the military, that's that whole attraction can go for either way. That I think valuing all of the skills. Yeah, I think that's an important thing when you were talking about knitting and spinning and so forth. If you have a kindred or a region where you have people doing all of course, this may be my SCA background coming up, but you have people doing blacksmithing and sword work and knitting and crocheting and spinning and weaving and all the rest of it, and you get a much more balanced perspective on what our early Germanic ancestors were doing, and why women's work was just as important as men's work.
Yeah, okay, and I know that a lot of people would probably be really freaking out that I keep saying anything about belly dancing, but it is actually very interesting because I recreated the Ekbed girl's costume, and it has that big bronze belt, or looks like a belt buckle, but it's not really a buckle, but it's a decorative disc where we would have a belt buckle in modern day. And I didn't understand what the heck it was about until I wore that in a dance studio and started doing some of the dancing moves that you typically do. It's very phallic. It's very phallic when you start dancing with it. So, that was important for my journey and understanding textile stuff the way that I was researching at the time. And I was like, okay, now it makes more sense to me that this would be possibly having to do with fertility rituals or something like that. Because trust me, it's very phallic.
Well, the whole dance tradition that you see in those figures.
Absolutely.
How are your back bends?
Actually, they were pretty good at the time. I took all those little bronze figures, and choreographed a dance to Freya with all of those poses that I could find.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Anybody ever film that?
They did, but not with that costume on. I can totally let y'all see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting.
Way to go.
So I think that's, interesting that has that kind of implication and very sexual almost and fertility. And it makes me kind of wonder kind of what kind of, things they may have been doing back then that we don't necessarily have a historical record of, because it's hard to record interpretive dance.
Yeah.
It
is. And every time it's done, it's different.
Yes.
Even if you are working with the same choreography over and over, it's never the same performance twice.
All right, so I have a question for you guys. This comes from Morgane from IRC. Is your practice of heathenry informed by feminism, and if so, how? Are heathenry and feminism compatible? I will let Skadi start.
Dang.
She's being too quiet.
Yes and yes. My entire worldview is informed by feminism, which, first of all, I think it needs to be made clear what feminism actually is. Feminism is understood by, this same hypermasculine mentality as sort of man-hating or female superiority, or somehow like displacing men from their positions of it is about displacing people from their positions of unearned privilege. It's about equality for everyone, not just for women. It's not about taking men down a peg. It's about elevating women to the same position in society. It's about fairness for everybody across socioeconomic class, sexuality. It's about, LGBT issues. It's about sort of like doing away with homophobia, transphobia. It's about fairness and humanness and humanity for everybody. And I don't really think most people would disagree that that's generally a good idea. So that's where my worldview comes from. As a sociologist, we spend a lot of time studying the doom and gloom of inequality, studying, the haves and the have-nots, studying oppression, studying privilege, looking at all the empirical evidence that's really fucking depressing. There you go. And it's informed my spiritual practice. It informs my politics. It informs what I pay attention to and how I see the world. And I don't think that it's fundamentally incompatible with heathenry at all. If we are this faith that values sort of strength and perseverance and resilience and sort of like standing up for what you believe in and just saying like, hey, this is what I fucking believe in. This is what's right. This is what's honorable. If that's the faith that we say we have, then certainly I think feminism is completely compatible. I think it's kind of mandatory.
Yeah, and I'm going to co-sign on that definition of feminism. As normal listeners, I am definitely probably the most liberal of our regular host and very much identify as a feminist. And so I would say, just from my own personal point of view, I think heathenry actually empowers me as a feminist. It allows me to regain power that I may not have had otherwise in previous religious experiences. I feel very much an equal in heathenry. I don't feel like I have to apologize for existing as a woman. There's, and plus it's also for me very much the fact that equality is good for my tribe, it's good for my family, it's good for my community. So how could I not be a feminist?
Right. Right.
I saw a thing a while back on YouTube, I think. Joss Whedon, who most folks probably know from his multiple different TV shows and stuff, and movies, but he was accepting an award, I don't know, from some women's organization, because he likes to have strong female characters in his shows. And he went on this whole thing about how it shouldn't be called feminism anymore. It should be called genderism, where let's not just focus or make it sound like we're focused on women being more powerful than men, because that's not what it is. Like you were saying, Scotty, it should be everyone being equal. And I really liked that. I actually forwarded that or shared that on my Facebook at the time. But that was a while back.
The Alliance for Inclusive Heathenry, that whole idea came because we didn't want to say what we were against. Lori Wood pointed out we should be saying what we're for. So we had to come up with a logo, which eventually had, well, you can look at it on Facebook if you look under Alliance for Inclusive Heathenry. Trafnar has probably had one of just about everything possible in its membership at some time or another. And in the San Francisco Bay Area community, gender issues, we've kind of gone beyond worrying about feminism. We're into gender identity in all permutations now. Yeah. And I'd rather call it humanism. The other thing, Snook says there are 12 goddesses and they're just as important as the gods. He does not proceed to tell us as much about them, probably, in my opinion, because there were a lot of women's stories that he never learned. But, if Snorri, who is by then is a Christian, oh, here it is, if you can see it.
Cool.
Is it?
And I'll have a link up after. I'll have a link up with show notes after the show is up on Facebook, and then a link to it to Twitter on it as well.
So if Snorri was a Christian and influenced by Christian attitudes towards women could still say that, then I think that reflects concept of women's power.
Diana, unfortunately, we lost you on that last little bit there.
Oh, that's bad. It's profound. You hear me now?
Yes.
No, I was just pointing out if Snorri Sturluson, who was in Christian Iceland, could still say that the goddesses were just as important as the gods. If he didn't know as many stories about them, it's possibly because they were part of women's traditions that were really the women were telling the men about them. But I think that's significant.
Absolutely. I mean, anytime that you're going to read, anytime you read a primary source or secondary source even, you have to be really critical of, who was writing it, what was their background, all these things that people, they look at the sagas and the Eddas, and while they're awesome, they were written, a few hundred years after the fact by Christian men, So yeah, they're not going to have, as everybody by now probably knows, they don't have the same perspective as they would have done if, you know, the actual pre-Christian heathens had written them themselves.
Well, I mean, the omission of women
Well,
from history isn't a uniquely heathen problem.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
but I was going to say that my kindred over the years has tended to run around 2/3 women to 1/3 men. So there really has never been any question in Rashnar about women's status.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have a question from writer Jaime. Yeah, you know I don't pronounce things well. What are your thoughts? And I'm so glad we have Diana here for this question here. What are your thoughts on the practice of Seidr in modern heathenry, since it's traditionally been seen as a women's practice? And we literally have the woman who wrote the book on Seidr.
Okay, well, first, Seidr is the word for the whole set of magical practices. The oracular part that I've focused on is more properly Spey. When I started, my assumption was that this would be something that women and possibly the gay men in heathenry could develop as a specialty. When we started doing workshops, we discovered that a lot of straight men were coming to the workshops, and they had no trouble learning how to do it either. So it's clearly not inherently for the receptive gender, whatever that is. I think that, again, regional differences. There are some regions in which I think it definitely still is associated with women and gay men. And I have to say that of the people I know who we trained, who then took it up and made it a major part of their heathen practice, 2 of them were gay men, and the others mostly were women. So the straight men could learn it and could do it, but don't seem to have made it part of their identity as heathens.
Well, historically, I mean, in the sagas, if you look at them, they talk about the men going under the cloak or whatever. The guy who was the law speaker at at Thingvellir, you know, when they decided to throw out the gods, unfortunately. He went under the cloak for a couple days and found that knowledge.
Thorgir of Lightwater.
Yeah.
Thorgir something. People there's a lot of right, and there are and as well.
I can't hear her at all.
Yeah, Diana, we're losing you again.
Are you losing me? Is this better? A little closer to the screen?
I think it's just your.
Can
I
you
think
hear
it's
that?
just your Wi-Fi. I can hear you.
Yeah.
I think it's just your Wi-Fi because you're digitizing.
Like a robot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it on an iPhone 6, which is probably somewhat limited.
Yeah, hotel Wi-Fi is not the best.
No.
Yeah.
No.
How far did we get with that?
Not very, to be honest.
Not very far.
Okay. Okay. Did you get the part about the men that we've trained in my stage workshops?
Yep.
We got that part. We got to when we were talking about going under the cloak. That's where we started losing you.
Right. Right. Okay. So there are a lot of references in the sagas to men working magic, and some of it is identified as Heathenry. And of course, in Heimskringla, we have that whole long list of things that Odin could do, and all or some of them are identified as being safe. So, in the whole, when Loki's making accusations in Lucasena, and he says to Odin, and you were on Samsi Isle basically doing magic with witches. And so, but it gets into that whole issue of sexuality and the kind of the concept of receptivity becoming increasingly identified as a purely feminine trait, and as a feminine, anything feminine becoming increasingly lower in status as the Christians took over.
Which is a prevailing thought. That's how you you know, discredit anything these days. You feminize it.
Right.
Yeah.
Kari Taring, I don't know if y'all know
She's
her.
my buddy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you should.
Yeah. If you don't, you should. You should know who she is.
Yeah, she'll be here in Grinnell doing a performance at the end of the month.
Oh, I had asked her to be on the
go.
show for tonight, but she had a prior engagement. But
I'm still planning on getting her on the show.
you should.
She's on my list.
Add her CDs to the list of resources you're putting up.
But she had told me that I think it was several years ago she had gone over to Norway. She's always hopping across the pond to do more research. But she had come back with this dance technique they were doing either in Norway or Sweden, where instead of saying male and female dance parts, it was impulse and control. And that the female energy, what we would consider or call female energy, usually would be more controlled, whereas the male was more impulse. But that by calling it a different thing, it freed people up to take whatever part they wanted to.
Good idea.
Now, I want to add something else here in regards to talk about this with the gendering. How do you guys feel about, and this is another question that came from Facebook, how do you see the difference in roles for women in rituals? Are they sexist? Some of the example they used here was requiring the horn bearer ensemble to be a woman.
Yeah.
And I'll be completely honest, when they said that, I'm like, what? Because that's something that I guess maybe experienced once, so it never dawned on me that was a thing.
That it was a thing.
It certainly
that
is in many
horn bearer was a
kindreds.
woman? Yeah. That's
There are some
always...
heathen traditions where that is definitely required. It's the more high church heathen traditions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, is having those gendered roles, is it sexist in ritual? Is it sexist?
The whole lady with the mead cup research, I think that partially has started because of looking back at the role of the woman carrying the horn around in Beowulf and all the rest of it. So we're trying to construct authentic practices. That certainly is when it's right there, it's well attested, and it's really pretty. But you're right, it's sexist.
It gives the women
so
something
sometimes
to do,
we
because
and
otherwise...
sometimes we don't.
Yeah, that's
I actually have to say... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, in the old-style male-dominated heathen kindreds, at least one woman had something to do.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Danielle, you were going to say?
I was going to say, kind of following on that a little bit, I think all of us, I know that all of us knew Rod Landreth, and I had to, he and I got on very well, and we were very good friends, but he kept trying to push this idea forward, and I finally just had to slap him down about it because it was really getting on my damn nerves, about having like a women's auxiliary at when the chieftains were having their meetings, to have a women's auxiliary, and I was like, hell no.
Auxiliary?
Yes, that's what he was saying.
Boy.
And I was like, no, because an auxiliary means
right.
that we are lesser and that we are not full participants, so that's some bullshit. And he finally kind of backed off.
Can we also say there are also female leaders? We have some on the show right now. I mean, they call me she who must be obeyed for a reason.
Yeah, well, I think he'd been hanging around with those high church heathens too long.
Oh, I wish I had known that. I would have assisted you with that, Danielle, because that was, yeah, not cool.
I only
Not
had to
cool.
say it once. I only had to say it once.
It was like the thought just didn't dawn on him. But yeah,
I know that it didn't. I know that it didn't because he's a guy, and you're not going to think like another person, you know. And his experience is completely different than any of our experiences, and of course, our experiences are completely unique on their own. But as a man, he wasn't going to think about it like that.
now I will say
Typically.
this. In your experiences, because like I will freely admit most of my exposure to other groups is very Midwestern and Southern. Where do women fall now in far as kindred and tribe and theo leadership and group leadership? Because there's a ton of other. We tend to default to using the word tribe on the show. But where do women fall now as far as leadership? Because it seems like all I see a majority men. I'll be honest.
It's still a majority men. I mean, women's
Yeah.
leadership is increasing, particularly because we're having these conversations, and so heathens are becoming more aware of the inequity, but it's still male-dominated, because when people think of a chieftain, they think of a man. And I think more or less women are sort of tracked into the support roles of basically getting all the auxiliary shit done.
Just
Yeah.
some of this is regional.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. In your guys' experience out there, it is much different, but you guys may be the exception rather than the rule.
Well, the Northeast has more women in leadership roles too.
Yeah, they do too.
So I have a follow-up.
I wonder if that has any correlation to in the South, you don't typically see women taking leadership roles in the Christian church. I wonder if that has any correlations with what happens out, west or up in the Northeast. I don't know.
The ratio of Methodists and Episcopalians to Baptists in any given area. Well, if you think
Skadi, I think you're the person to talk to this one.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the data.
I'm loving that you're here with your data.
Give me a second.
Okay.
So while she's looking for that, we actually have a follow-up question to the question about women's roles and ritual. And this is from Torin, one of our hosts. So so it's actually a very good question. How is ritual roles sexist in light of ritual semiotics? The presence of a man or a woman, especially in places where fertility is important, can be an important factor. That's his question and point. So I'll let you take that one first, Alvilldr.
Wait, I don't know that I caught the whole question.
Basically,
can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, how is ritual roles sexist, if genders in specific ritual roles sexist, in light of ritual semiotics, such as the presence of a man or a woman, especially in places where fertility is important, can be an important factor?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course, there's going to be a little bit of that, but at the same time, I mean, women have done their own fertility rituals without men involved forever. I certainly have. I don't know about anybody else in the room, but and I know other ladies who've done it as well. So I don't think that that's necessarily too much of an issue.
Diana?
Coming out of in the first paganism, supposed to have a lot of English and Wiccan influence, and that whole system is based on duotheism, and I think some of one of the nice things about heathenry is that our focus is much broader. So whereas in a Wiccan ritual, the Lord and the Lady pretty much have to be there unless it's a person trying to transcend that. In a heathen ritual, it doesn't necessarily have that limited focus. But the best symbol for a sharp sword is a sharp sword, and the best symbol for male or female fertility is a fertile male or a female. So depending on what kind of magic you're trying to do, it might be very important. But there's so much else you do in heathenry.
Yeah. And I want to think, too, I mean, that's very valid, of course. I mean, if you're trying to make babies, you're trying to make babies. But I want to, what is in the Heimskringla where, like, they found this circle of women with, like, a horse's penis or something like that doing a ritual, and they freaked out and had to, huh?
No, it wasn't a circle of women. It was the family.
A family.
Up in Hålogaland, and it's in Flooding Book somewhere. And the woman of the old plow horse died, and of course they were making use of all the parts. And the old wife said, "Oh, I'll take the phallus," and she pickles it basically. And they developed their own little ritual where they pass it around, and each person in the family takes it up and says something, and makes a wish on it or whatever. And that's just fine, and the farmstead's doing quite well until one day King comes along, King Olaf, and King Olaf Digre. And he comes in disguise, so he's already breaking hospitality by coming in. Well, you can come in disguise, but so they invite him in, they feed him, they bring out the bowl, the phallus, and to pass it around. And when it comes to the king, he throws it to the dog and says, "You're all, heathen, and I'm going to make you Christian," and basically forces them to convert on pain of death, which, did not understand hospitality. Not a good guest. But this was a homegrown, and then there may have been some kind of a tradition in the region. And the horse, of course, is associated with Freyr. So it's a kind of a Vannic ritual practice, but it's not at all clear how widespread that particular practice might have been, but the symbolism certainly was widespread. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, I got some data.
All right, I love data.
Okay, so the question that I asked in my survey was, who is the primary leader of your kindred? So of the 349 people who answered, because those were the only ones that were applicable, the rest of the people selected not applicable because they didn't have a kindred or weren't a part of a group. So of 349, 162 of those kindreds were led by men, 64 by women, and 122 claimed that they were led by, that members shared leadership responsibility.
Ah,
Nice.
interesting.
It's interesting
So.
how our perceptions and what's actually reality is a little skewed. Even when, when I still think of heathenry as, because of where I am regionally, as a primarily guy religion. I mean, even, versus what the actual numbers are. I find that something about that in our perceptions is just very interesting.
Yeah, well, it certainly started out that way. But I get mail through my contact addresses I get a lot of women write to me. I also get a lot of men from all over the place.
I think one of the things perhaps that gives us the perception of sort of the male domination is that many of the people who are most vocal in heathenry are men, and many of the people who are most vocal on the internet in heathen forums are men, because that's where hyper-masculinity, sort of cock-swaggering and, like posturing happens behind the keyboard. And so I think that's also something that influences the way that we perceive what's going on.
Well, I think it's great. Just a quick here to let you guys know, we actually have a contest going on tonight, and I want to kind of give our people who are listening live a heads up because it's going to go live at 8:30 Pacific. We are giving away a copy of Peace Weavers and Shield Maidens, Women in Early English Society. So there will be a post that will go up. Like the post, comment on the post, and each like gets one entry, comment gets you one entry, and we will draw for that next Tuesday. So that is courtesy of Josh, who'll be giving that away, but it's a great book, and in fact right now I believe they are sold out on Amazon. So not an easy book to get a hold of. So just to keep that in mind for everybody, because that is pretty exciting. I think that's another great book to add to kind of that list of things that I still haven't read yet.
It's not very long. It's you can have someone read it to you. Actually, it's pretty short. Yeah, but it's really good.
My plan is to get it and have it. Because I'm in university, I have access to someone who can basically scan the book using a machine, and it's faster, and then run it through a program, and then I'll be able to read it. It's just not till Christmas. I'm up to my eyeballs in calculus right now, so.
Oh, bless your heart.
Business calculus, yeah. Nope. I thought taking an 8-week class would be a good idea.
What were you thinking?
Not with math.
I know, math. I just can't math it. So looking over here, let me look and see. I find it really interesting. I'm looking over the Reddit conversation about women and leadership, and it's really like one person says, why do you think there are so few heathen women compared to heathen men? And then there's like 5 responses of, well, in my area, it's mostly women. And so it really, I think regional is definitely a huge factor that is very interesting. So one more question I have from Reddit, and I don't really know how to couch this one because it doesn't really touch on anything we've discussed, and it really fall in my realm of experience, but how can heathens, both men and women, help combat against I'm going to say potential sexual abuse in heathenry? I personally have never had that experience within heathenry, and I don't. General neo-paganism, I've kind of heard that experience, but I don't know that's necessarily anything that I've heard of being an issue. And so it's from Heathen Hugs, and I apologize that I don't know much about that, but hopefully you ladies, with all of our years of experience, if this is an issue and something we can discuss, one of you would have knowledge of it.
Not me.
I don't have, actually, I am not aware of anything in my local community, but I would think that one way is, as women come in, to make sure that they are aware of the great power of our goddesses and the goddesses as role models for how to stand up to anybody who wants to give them shit.
All I heard from that was shit.
Yeah. Basically, from what I gather from that is that let women know what power they have and that no one's allowed to give them shit. That's what I gathered from
Well,
that.
there you go. Okay. That all, but to use the goddesses as role models, to make sure that they stand from the goddesses, not auxiliary.
Yeah, and I think that is because really, if you look, women didn't really, even if whether you're looking at the goddesses, you're looking at sagas, you're looking at whatever, it's very rare that women took something just because they were a woman. Now, there's whole stories of class and status and those issues, and that's a it's a whole different story. But just because of gender, I don't recall anything where a woman took, basically became subservient by the sheer fact of her gender.
Well, thralls of both genders were
Right.
abused.
Right.
Right. And like, that's a class issue,
Oh.
which is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
In terms of
free women, the family make the marriage because of the whole socioeconomic in the society, but for the marriage, women walk out of the home.
I think we've lost Diana again.
Yeah, we've lost that. Diana, when you get a chance, have Lori turn off your video, because I think that would help save your bandwidth. If we can
Lori?
turn off your video.
Can you turn off my video? Because using me periodically.
Okay.
Bye.
Did you tell him that you won't divorce a man for not having a big enough penis? Because that's the best.
Yes!
Did you hear that?
Yep.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah.
Lori, that is Heathen,
Yes.
That's a t-shirt right there. Heathenry. You can divorce a man for not having a big enough penis.
Yep.
Oh, man.
It's all true. Yeah, Icelandic law is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, that was great. That exactly was,
Which caused them to then develop standard Icelandic male penis size.
There were standard measurements for what a male penis ought to be.
Developed because of cost.
yeah,
It's part of the law.
I definitely think that is really kind of, you know, exactly. And that, like I said before when we were touching on feminism, hedonism, I really feel empowers me as a woman more than any other religious experience I've had, even with some of the goddess spiritualities. I feel, you know, I don't feel like I am dependent on anyone for my quote unquote salvation. You know, my religious experience is my own. It's not dependent on anyone to try to interpret it for me, or, you know, and that to me I always found very empowering because of previous experiences.
Well, it also doesn't require us to put down men.
No.
Right.
When I was still with the Northwest Arkansas Kindred, we decided the heathen gals decided we'd start having girls' days, at least once a month, if not more often. And at the time, there were 3 of us, and so we'd get together on the weekends and read runes, or just go to the movies, or just something, you know, away from all the guys. We spent a lot of time together as a kindred, and there was one of the young women who had always felt ashamed and absolutely angry at the universe that she had been born female, because she thought female was lesser. Not necessarily, I don't think it was necessarily because of anything that had happened to her or anything. I don't think that her family was like,
No, that's it.
well, I don't think that her family was like very religious or anything. But anyway, but you know, she told the other 2 of us that she had never thought of being female as having power until she started hanging out with us. I was like, girlfriend, all my power comes from my femininity. I worship 3 goddesses. I don't have hardly any male god stuff on my altar. But that's me.
One thing that perhaps I should comment on is that in heathenry, it is okay to have a close relationship with a god or goddess of the opposite gender, and especially Odin. I hear from a lot of women who have found themselves in a relationship with Odin, and I also know men whose primary deity is Freya. So Freya also gets a lot of women.
All right, so I have a couple more quick questions for you. Professor O'Donnell on IRC is wanting to know, how do you feel about how women are portrayed in kind of Vikingish or heathen-related media?
It's
It's all
improving.
very funny.
Mhm.
I wish that the outfits that you see like women in the quote-unquote Valkyrie outfits, I'd love to see, I love like when they do like, it's kind of like with the superheroes where they put men in those outfits. That's one of my favorite things.
If they have good legs.
Yeah. But really, I guess because you're looking at kind of, I still feel a lot of that is so heavily influenced by kind of the Victorian era romanticism of what Vikings were.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we have
Well,
go ahead.
also the male sexual fantasy of a woman who can fight by your, who can guard your back in battle.
Yeah, we lost most of that. He said a woman that can guard your back for you.
By day.
Yes.
And be in your bed at night.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a great fantasy.
That's the big part there.
So I'm waiting. I'm waiting right now on. This is the probably the most controversial topic. We got about 10 minutes to talk about it before we'll have to wrap up. And it's a topic I think that we've talked about on the show before, and I've talked about personally. But what role, if any, does abortion have in heathenry? As women, I feel like we are probably the ones who actually should be talking about this. I love the guys usually go, "Yep, nope, your turn, your opinion, go ahead." So, anybody want to touch that one?
Well, it was completely. Oh, go ahead, Diana.
No, you. I'll fill in if you.
Okay.
Afterwards, depending.
Well, historically, if a child could not be provided for or was not wanted for whatever reason, they would leave it at the crossroads or expose it in some way prior to it being named. And I think that probably doing it in vitro probably is less traumatic. And I'm glad that we have that option today.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. With the addition of, if you believe in reincarnation, which certainly seems to have been part of the system, at least for some people, what you're doing is giving the child another chance to come to arrive at a better situation.
And I think it definitely also comes down to what I think is kind of one of the most prevailing ethical kind of statements that you hear, and you hear us repeat this endlessly, so you may actually hear somebody argue with me tonight, but when it comes down to it, that which is good for the tribe is good. That which is evil to the tribe is evil. So the decision is made on, being able to support that child. Is the rest of the family going to starve if we take on another mouth to feed?
I think that's the thing missing in the greater debate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was sorry to disappoint you that wasn't such a controversial question, because we're pretty.
Not for us.
I didn't think it would.
No, not for us. No.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be, but they were pretty good. But I will say that right now, one of the big things. Right now, I guess we got 5 minutes left before we kind of start to wrapping up. Where do you see women's roles going in the future, and what would you like to see kind of in the future of heathenry? I'll let you start, Skadi.
Oy.
You just finished this book.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, what I talk about in the book, throughout the book, is that the future of heathenry depends on the future of our context. So where women go in this country, whether our rights are abridged or protected, how our legislators legislate our bodies, how we socialize our kids, all of those things in sort of our wider, if we're talking about American heathenry and the wider sort of American society, is what's going to be the underpinning for anything that happens in heathenry. So, you know, in the past few years anyway, those things have not gone well for women in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I'm all about how we exist in a social, political, and economic context, and we don't get to decide what reality we construct outside of that, because we don't live outside of that.
I absolutely agree, because certainly my experience as I have interacted with heathens in different regions. I'm sorry, we just have to talk about regionalism, I think, to address this. But the concept of heathenry as a religious movement, and it's not just the United States, but we have to take into consideration Iceland, the Nordic countries, Germany, other places, because if heathenry as a religious movement is going to take permanent root, we, I think, have to have awareness that transcends our participation in our regional cultures.
Yep.
I agree, definitely. Alvilldr, want to close us out on this one?
Well, as a historian, all my context is gained from the past, and I don't know. I've moved around a lot. Skadi and I were chatting before we actually started this, because she and I came to heathenry about the same time in the same place, but we had very different experiences. I was in the military at that particular time. I don't know if I just really won the freaking luck of the draw. I could be very open about my religion, and there were several of us in our little kindred there on Ramstein Air Base at the time, and you know, it wasn't an issue. I had a lot of other pagan friends too, who even got to move out of the dorms so they could burn candles as part of their religious observances. So I don't know. It will be interesting. I don't feel as free here and now as I did overseas on a military base. And granted that I'm in the South, I probably won't ever live anywhere but the South. And now that I'm in Chattanooga, I'll probably never live anywhere else because I love it here. But, yeah, I don't know. We're just going to have to roll with it and make the best of it we can. I mean, that's all we can do.
I kind of have to agree with all y'all. It's definitely, unfortunately, it is somewhat dependent also on the overculture.
Yeah.
Honestly, I live in the South, and while I'm as open as I can be, I'm not terribly open to my family, though one of my cousins is watching us tonight, because I just don't want to have to deal with, I legitimately am concerned about being able to find a job when I finish school, and so I just hope that in 20 years that's not an issue for, the next generation of heathens. That's not an issue.
It'll be less of an issue for sure.
Yes. So I want to thank you guys so much for being on with us tonight. I was going to say, if you don't mind real quick, sorry, talking about where we can get your new book.
Amazon.
So, and for those of you who don't know, it is called American Heathens, The Politics of Identity in a Pagan Religious Movement. It's very pretty. It's on Amazon.
There it is, right here. That's the cover.
They currently only have 4 in stock left, so there are more on the way.
Whoa.
Congratulations for that.
Whatever that means.
I was going to say, I hope you're getting a good cut out of that, girl.
No, I am not.
No.
Academic publishing. Yeah.
No.
And Also, you are going to be at the Midwest Winter Moot, which is going to be on the 6th through the 8th
Yeah.
coming up, and that's going to be
November.
But if you want to have more on that, we've put it on our Facebook, but it's I'll relink it when I put up all the show links later, and I'm going to be there as well. So if you're in the area or in Arkansas or anywhere nearby, I know great things. These people are. I can say great things about most of the people I know of this group. So definitely come out. It's going to be a good time. Diana's got a new book that. When did this one come out?
In February.
All right, and it is called.
Well, March actually.
Yeah.
It's called Possession, Depossession, and Divine Relationships. It's not specifically a heathen book, but for some odd reason, it has an awful lot of heathen references.
I can't imagine. And she has a lot of other books for sale. And you can, of course, go to her books are available on Amazon, and then Diana-Paxson.com has some of her other stuff. And definitely good luck this week at the Parliament of World Religions. I really would like to keep in touch because I'd be really curious to see if any other heathens are there. I'm curious to see maybe if the AFA comes or any of the other groups.
Somehow I don't think of the AFA in context of interfaith. But we'll see.
You know what? Stranger things have happened.
Zing.
Stranger things
at least
have happened.
with 3 women running the booth, it should at least help to balance the impression of heathenry as a bunch of hairy Vikings.
Not that we don't like some of the hairy Vikings.
Well,
but,
yeah, true. But
and then Danielle, if you want to
after we do the
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, after we explain that heathen does not mean a new kind of atheist.
That is true. That is the other thing when you Google heathen and it comes up with, a bunch of atheist blogs. It's kind of funny because my brother's an atheist, so I guess we're both heathen technically. And then the other thing, if you want to go ahead and talk about your website, Alvilldr.
Yeah, I need to post some new things on there. I've done a few bits of original research that are on there. Most recently, I had given a presentation last summer on, what was it? It's been a while now. Like gift giving and sacrifice, hospitality, gift giving, and sacrifice. And I'm currently starting to do research on women in modern heathenry. Not quite as quantitative sort of stuff as Skadi has done. More, I don't know. I'm looking more for what people do in their home. What women do that makes their practice important to them, and gives them that connection. So
that's data too.
I'm sorry?
I said that is data too.
It is. More on the qualitative side though than quantitative, but
that's real. It's real data. It's empirical.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, anybody listening is interested in helping me with that, give me a holler. You can always email me at alvilldr@gmail.com, and I'm sure Lauren can put that on the website. And you can go to my website. My website is alvilldr.com. So.
All right, so thank you guys so much. I'll wrap this up with a couple of announcements. First of all, because I forgot to tell you guys, I'm drinking Woodchuck Gumption tonight. Normally we go around with everyone and they all have their fancy Cascadian beers, and I have stuff from Kroger, but that's all right. So just wanted to share that. Don't forget, guys, we really appreciate your support on Patreon, and if you can go and support us on Patreon, it's at patreon.com/heathentalk. If you pledge to do $5, you're going to get a copy of Josh's audio Havamal, which is, he finished the first section tonight, or this week. I know he's finished the first section, and so I'm pretty excited to get that out. That'll be out to our supporters. We also have other levels of support. Go go out, like us on Facebook, like this video, please, because it helps get us more viewers on YouTube. And also follow us on Twitter at heathen_talk. And of course, I linked it on Facebook tonight, but we have, in honor of tonight, our official Ladies Night t-shirt. Yes, you want one. They're awesome. They are not quite as out there as the men's. They're very petite little logos. And also, we now have Heathen Talk shirt in fun sizes. So that is children's sizes. So I know people have asked for both of those. So please, if you want a shirt, want to help support us, help us pay the bills, we appreciate it. I want to thank all of our guests tonight. Thank you, Mark, always, for all the work you did. And since I do not have Josh and Torin, on behalf of all of us at Heathen Talk, you're not the boss of me. You're doing it wrong. Everybody have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.